Reports are coming in that Dan Bongino's office at the FBI is completely cleared out and empty. Now rumors are being thrown out that Deputy Director Dan Bongino will be abandoning his position and role when it comes to 2026. I'm going to cover all that right here, plus go into a little bit more of Attorney General Pam Bondi's failures and, more than likely, some more of her upcoming failures as more news has been brought to light just today when it comes to exactly what Pam Bondi is not doing as Attorney General. That, of course, is linked into why Dan Bongino is feeling the way that he is, without a doubt. Then we need to discuss the current economic situation for Gen Z. New reports are revealing that Gen Z is paying astronomically higher costs than all previous generations have thus far. I'm going to go over all that data and show you the most recent poll from our boy Harry Enten over at CNN when it comes to this current Trump economy. And then finally, time to cover the poll on my community tabs and read your guys' comments. It wasn't a very popular poll by any means because I was, of course, asking the hypothetical question of should we remove Social Security, Medicare, or lower drastically our national defense budget, all in the name of being fiscally more responsible and attempting at least to do something about this death spiral of national debt that America is accruing. We'll go over all that and a little more maybe right here, right now on American Advocates. This shouldn't be a story that shocks anyone. I've actually been tracking this on and off the entire year. When it comes to Deputy Director Dan Bongino, he couldn't be more dissatisfied. I mean, I have a feeling everything this guy thought he was going to get done or try to get done during his time as the Deputy Director of the FBI, I think he's come very quickly to the realization that none of it is going to happen. It's been truly a disastrous year for the Trump Department of Justice. A major, major disappointment for everybody. MAGA voters, Americans alike. And it's got to be a disappointment for President Trump himself. I, for the life of me, have yet to figure out why he hasn't taken more action, actually, when it comes to the Department of Justice. It almost seems as if Trump might be complicit in allowing all of these things to be hidden or remain uncovered. And so when it comes to Deputy Director Dan Bongino, now the stories are coming in that it looks like his office has been cleaned out at the FBI. It looks like no one's been in there. Looks like no one's doing anything in that office. And Dan Bongino was apparently asked about this, and I guess he stated that it's going to be up in the air. He's thinking about it. He might just not be there in 2026. You can see in this article from The Sun, Dan Bongino's FBI office is empty, and his chief of staff has moved on. Ex-podcaster may be gone come January 2026, FBI insiders are predicting. The former MAGA firebrand's unprecedented and tumultuous tenure at the FBI, which is likely to end in January 2026, may have already started with his D.C. office now emptied out and his chief of staff taking on a new role, The Sun has learned. I mean, the writing's on the wall, honestly. And I don't even blame Dan Bongino. I actually, in a way, pity Dan Bongino. The dude had probably one of the most successful podcasts of all time. He certainly was making far more money as a podcaster than he knew he'd ever make as a deputy director of the FBI. What Dan Bongino decided to do was sacrifice his life and his earnings in order to embark on a mission towards achieving the justice that he felt compelled to achieve and to get on behalf of the American people. It's very clear that Dan Bongino went in as a good guy, as a guy who believed what he was saying on his podcast, and as a guy who genuinely wanted to fight for justice. And what a sad story it's been to watch all of it unfold this year, as Dan Bongino just seems to have sold his soul, whether forced to or otherwise, to the machine, to the corruption and the swamp that is our American politics. The transformation is depressing as well as just honestly startling, kind of scary almost.
Listen, that Jeffrey Epstein story is a big deal. Please do not let that story go. Keep your eye on this. Catherine Rumler, we need to keep the heat on this case, folks. There are a lot of people who are knee deep in the Washington swamp who are not telling you the truth about serious allegations out there that Epstein may have had video and audio of people out there doing things they shouldn't have been doing. And you should be asking yourself the question, how is it that all these people, the CIA director, the Obama fixer, Bill Clinton, all intersected paths with Jeffrey Epstein? Jeffrey Epstein isn't with us anymore, and nobody seems to want to talk about it. outside of a few entrepreneurial media outlets saying, hey, this is a big deal.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
I'll never forget seeing that sit-down interview earlier this year. You could see by the look on his face. I mean, that is not a guy who believes a word that he's saying, nor is it a guy who is happy to be sitting there and saying the things that he's saying. You know, there's no aura of confidence there. There's no aura of sincerity or genuineness or honesty. None of it. It's all missing in that interview. That entire interview is hard to watch, disheartening to see, and honestly was the beginning of the end in my mind of any pursuit of justice being achieved on behalf of the American people. And this is a real problem in America right now. I don't think people are quite aware of how much of a potential catastrophe America could be facing. When you have an economy that, though the Trump administration insists is doing very well, but in reality is not doing good for the young people. And that'll be my second segment here where I cover the Gen Z cost of living. But for now, I'll just say it. The young generations are suffering. They're struggling. Cost of living is outrageous. Affordability is not improving. We are not in the golden age if you're a millennial or a Gen Zer. We're just not. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And when you have that issue, when you have the economy that just sucks, no hope on the horizon, and then on the other hand, you have a completely incompetent Justice Department that can't seem to get anything done, completely cucked this Justice Department. You're not delivering justice on behalf of the American people. So therefore, you're openly, maybe not promoting corruption, but you're openly just letting the American people know that if you make it to a certain level of power in this country, all corruption is fair game. There is no justice. Meanwhile, to the rest of the peasants, us, you suffer in your economy. You figure out how to pay your rent and buy your groceries. Meanwhile, on our end, we're not going to live up to our promises. There is no justice for you, you peasant. What do you think when you combine those two ingredients together, the recipe is for? What do you think happens? Nothing good. Likely a violent revolution. I'll just openly put it to you that way. Like, let's not kid ourselves here. What they're doing by not achieving justice and by not fixing cost of living is they have put recipes into a pot of boiling water and they've cranked the temperature up. And when that water boils, it's not going to be pretty. And that's not something I want for America, but I could totally see it happening. And then you have guys like Dan Bongino here who honestly want to make a change, and the system just swallows him up and spits him out, which is what we're probably going to see in January. I would be shocked if he's still there and finishes out 2026 as the deputy director of the FBI. I would be shocked. What's more likely to happen is he's gone and the deep state is relieved and they replace him with some Muppet who will get along, no doubt, very well with Kash Patel. This was just from about 2 weeks ago where there was some breaking news of newly released emails obtained through a FOIA request that revealed that Dan Bongino was approached back in March to help redact and censor the Epstein files. And, you know, we're coming up on a supposed deadline that is this Friday, actually, where the Epstein files are ordered to be released after Trump signed the bill. Now, there are no legal consequences if the Trump administration refuses to release the Epstein files. There's a bit of misinformation circling the internet right now stating, oh my God, this is it. Trump has to release them. If he doesn't, he's in major shit. It's actually not true. There's actually no consequences for the Trump administration not releasing them. The only consequence would be an already worse image to deal with. And in my opinion, it's like, can it get even worse for the Trump administration? I mean, they blew this whole Epstein files thing out of proportion by trying to hide it for seemingly no good reason. I still stand by this statement that I've been making all year long. If you think Trump is incriminated in those files, I do think you're an absolute idiot. I just do. Trump was certainly associated with Jeffrey Epstein, but it's a rich network. It's what people do. Am I saying that there's a 100% chance he's not in them in an incriminating way? No. But overall, I think it's so highly unlikely. So why would Trump be hiding them? And you can get into all kinds of conspiracy theories on that. Some of them I actually am more inclined to believe, to be honest with you. I do think very likely it's all about protecting other rich people worldwide. Too many superpowers, too many other nations involved. Nevertheless, the truth is always the right path forward, and the Trump administration just decided overall that they weren't going to go that route, that they were going to gaslight the public into first thinking they were being released with that embarrassing Phase 1 binders moment that they'll never live down, and then on top of it, making the files disappear via a magic trick on Pam Bondi's desk, and then finally, for their final act of atrocity, gaslighting the American public into thinking that you are a pervert for continuing to ask for these files to be released. They don't exist anymore. What they do have is just perverted material. How dare you ask for transparency? Stop asking about it. If you keep asking about it, you're not an American. You're not a Republican. You're not MAGA. I mean, just what an embarrassment. And then having it all just explode in Trump's face where he ultimately was cucked, just as he always is. As usual, like he's cucked with everything else, he got cucked by his own party. Thomas Massie, Marjorie Taylor Greene, teaming up with Democrats like Ro Khanna in bipartisan fashion to almost unanimously agree that the Epstein Files Transparency Act needs to be signed by the president and we need to get all the information out there to the public. Thank God for that. But when it comes to Dan Bongino, just to summarize, I mean, this guy made a living talking about this stuff. And then the moment he had to put on the suit again and take an official government position, it seems like he was, I don't want to use the word forced, but seems like he was pushed into a direction where he had to sell his soul and start selling lies. Like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, they knew so much more about the Epstein files before they took their positions. Why do you think that is? This is not a man who's happy with the current body of work he's putting out there. And now the worst part is, can he even return with such a damaged reputation to his former very successful $1 million producing podcast? I don't think he can. Not in the same capacity. I certainly wouldn't watch him. I'd want to know. I'd watch his first episode back. I'd want to see how he explains himself. And I do pity him for this. I do. I think he had good intentions. But how can I support someone who finally got the position he was asking for only to sell his soul? And that goes for Kash Patel too, who I have no respect for or pity for. I think Kash Patel is a phony. And that's where I'm at with Dan Bongino. And you know, it's got to suck to be him even more because you're dealing with a boss like this. Pam Bondi right here. I thought this meme perfectly summarized her current first year as Attorney General. She screwed up the Comey and Tish James cases. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, just made a video about that last episode, was released yesterday. Ilhan Omar is still in Congress after the corruption. I don't believe she is capable of draining the swamp. It just can't be me thinking that Pam Bondi needs to go. Well, it isn't. Apparently more and more of America are starting to finally rally behind this notion. Of course, not Democrats, which again, do you ever wonder why Democrats, they complain about so many people in the Trump administration. They never complain about Pam Bondi though. I have not heard a single shred of Democrat criticism about Attorney General Pam Bondi. Not a single one, except when it comes to the Epstein files, which again is, of course, because they believe she's complicit in hiding them on behalf of President Trump. But besides that, I mean, they viciously come after some of the other Trump administration officials. Stephen Miller never catches a break, but they're not really all that active in complaining about Pam Bondi or Kash Patel. There's not really a whole lot of criticism there. I wonder why that could be. I mean, you can't convince me otherwise that what she did when it came to appointing Lindsay Halligan over the Comey and Letitia James cases, you can't tell me that that wasn't on purpose. Do a little research on that if you're not understanding the full story here. I already put out a video about it too, but it was an intentional mistake. There's just no way around it. There's no way there's somebody that stupid out there, not even Pam Bondi, to actually make that kind of a mistake at the level that she's at. This is not some nobody that Trump plucked out of nowhere. Pam Bondi has attorney general experience. She worked for the state of Florida before this. And yet there she was bypassing the Senate to appoint Lindsay Halligan over these cases, which gave the judges presiding over them a massive legal loophole to dismiss the charges, to throw the case out. The indictments didn't stand, and now Comey's free, Letitia James is free, and they shouldn't be. And I mean, there's just so much going on here. All the while, you have tweets like this from our Attorney General. This is what she chooses to focus on. After an intense investigation, the Department of Justice working with our FBI, prevented what would have been a massive and horrific terror plot in the Central District of California. The Turtle Island Liberation Front, a far-left, pro-Palestine, anti-government, and anti-capitalist group, was preparing to conduct a series of bombings against multiple targets in California beginning on New Year's Eve. The group also planned to target ICE agents and vehicles. This was an incredible effort by our U.S. attorneys' offices and the FBI to ensure Americans can live in peace. We will continue to pursue these terror groups and bring them to justice. Yeah, wonderful. That's amazing news, and I've been following that case pretty closely. I'm glad the FBI stopped it. My whole point in showing off that tweet is I don't really give a rat's ass to know Pam Bondi's opinion on that. She's the Attorney General. I very distinctly in my mind separate the FBI from Pam Bondi. What I expect out of Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and the FBI is to investigate. I expect them to stop stuff like this. Yes, that's a default expectation. I also expect them to investigate other serious matters that the Americans want investigated. I expect them to gather evidence, and then I expect them to turn that over to Pam Bondi. On Pam Bondi's end, I don't care. I don't care at that point that the FBI did that. They get the credit for that. When it comes to Pam Bondi, I want her to take care of all the legal proceedings, and I want legal victories on behalf of the American people that accomplish the goals that we want. One of the major factors when it came to last year's election and Trump overwhelmingly winning was because the American people were sick of corruption and we want retribution. And Pam Bondi hasn't delivered it at all. Not at all. We're well over 300 days in since Pam Bondi was sworn in as Attorney General. Not one single high-profile arrest. Not one. In fact, quite the opposite. Like I said, James Comey, he walked. I doubt anything will come from that. And that seems to be on purpose. Same with Letitia James. And the worst part about this is it's all like these easy layups too. This is not hard stuff. Trump is not asking for the impossible, and nor are the American people. This is not like we want her to pull stuff out of thin air. We're not actually asking for the same lawfare that the Democrats used so viciously and effectively, mind you, against the past Trump administration during Biden's term. But it does make me infuriated that the Democrats seem to know exactly what to do when they have power. Why is the Democrats' DOJ so morally bankrupt yet so efficient at doing what they did? We watched them dismantle the 2016 Trump administration, precisely enter in there and hit them with all kinds of charges. The Democrats didn't disappoint their voter base. Yet here we are with complete control over the government right now. I'm talking Senate, Congress, Judiciary, and Executive, all Republican, overwhelmingly so, a clear mandate by the American people, yet nothing. And this is why when you scroll down under a Pam Bondi name search on X, you see this photo now being plastered everywhere. Resign. Pam Bondi needs to resign. People retweeting this. I'll be retweeting this after I'm done recording this. Get her out of here. A deep state tool for the little country. I couldn't agree more. And worse yet, you can see the headlines here on X. Trump supporters urge Bondi to charge the January 6th committee before the deadline. Supporters demand Attorney General Pam Bondi act swiftly against figures like Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff for alleged irregularities in the Capitol riot probe, warning inaction risks letting justice slip away by early 2026. Pam Bondi, sworn in back in February of 2025, has pursued other cases like the January 6 pipe bomber arrest, but faces criticism for delays amid bureaucratic hurdles. The pressure highlights tensions between base expectations for accountability and the pace of federal probes. You can see right here on this tweet, a classic Gunther Eagleman post. Dear Pam Bondi, please do not let the statute of limitations run out on the J6 committee criminals. They all need to be held accountable. Get it done. Regards, 78 million Americans that voted for President Trump. And I'm just sure Pam Bondi's going to see these tweets and all of the outrage from the voter base and Americans in general, and she's going to get right to work and deliver us those results. I'm willing to bet within the next 2 months, Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff are handcuffed, wearing orange jumpsuits and behind bars. Oh, and yeah, that's sarcasm. For the 70% of people who somehow can't understand sarcasm, I've come to realize this as somebody now with an increased presence on social media. People do not understand sarcasm. Nevertheless, Pam Bondi is an absolute disaster, and it's nice to see Americans finally waking up to that. I have been calling proudly for her resignation since March. I knew she was a dud from the moment I saw her start talking all over Fox News, delivering absolutely no results. And I remember at the time giving her a deadline in my head and thinking, you know what? I'll sour on her completely if August 2025 rolls by and ends without a single indictment. And that's exactly what happened. She squeaked in some sort of Comey bullshit, which I knew was going to be bullshit and turned out to be bullshit. And we got nothing else done. Nothing done. So I'm done with Pam Bondi. It's time for her to go. You have somebody like Dan Bongino, who, again, like I said, did it to himself. So I have not much sympathy for, but pity, certainly, because Dan Bongino is a sincere and genuine person. That much I do believe. I think he entered with a mission and has ultimately failed it. But you have somebody like Dan Bongino threatening to quit. Meanwhile, no sign of Pam Bondi willing to go the same route. She should be the one resigning. And yet you've heard nothing. In fact, actually, the first time there was a little uproar on X about her resigning, she openly stated she was going nowhere. Isn't that nice? And this is just what happens when you allow the boss, who is Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi is the boss of the Department of Justice. She oversees all of it. And when you let a boss run the show who is this incompetent, good workers lose morale and good workers quit. And I think that's the dynamic we're seeing right now between Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino. Bondi literally is content to do nothing but arrest low-level street drug dealers that local law enforcement could take care of, by the way. That's all Bondi's ever focused on. She celebrates that and intentionally overlooks all the other objectives placed in front of her that the people actually want. And this frustrates people like Dan Bongino who can't get anything done. And no doubt Dan Bongino feels like an absolute fraud because he kind of is. That's why his office is empty in the DOJ. That's why his office is empty in the FBI. And that's why I think he will quit next year. And that's also why this poll 3 weeks ago on my community tabs really pissed me off. Should Trump fire Pam Bondi? And only 39% of people who voted, this was a lower number poll, I only wound up getting around 500 votes on it, but only 39% of people who voted on it said yes, 290 days, no arrests. 61% said no, she's doing an amazing job. And to that I just say like, F off. I just don't understand people in this party. The conclusion I ultimately came to was that the people voting yes are older Gen Xers and definitely baby boomers who probably just jerk off to Pam Bondi all the time. They consider her a gorgeous younger woman. And the comments under that poll actually backed that. Some of them I saw were literally just like crusty 65, 70-year-old Republicans talking about how Pam Bondi was a beautiful, precious, and amazing, stunning, powerful woman that they would support to the death. I'm not kidding. And honestly, it just goes to show that there's so much at play here when it comes to everything that's wrong with America. And when it comes to the boomer generation, I just lose more and more respect for them every single day as my eyes just get more and more open to the problems that we're facing and who really was behind those problems. It should be abundantly clear to everyone at this point that the Trump Department of Justice needs a massive cleansing and overhaul. All of them need to go. Dan Bongino, fire him before he quits for all I care. Like I said, I pity him, but I have no sympathy for him. He's made his bed, and it's time for him to lie in it. Kash Patel, absolutely fire him. He's a phony and a fraud. He's more focused on his girlfriend in another state who wants to be a country singer who's from Israel than he is from actually getting anything done or even telling the truth about the Epstein files. And then definitely fire Pam Bondi. Fire Pam Bondi and parade her through the streets so we can all line up to throw shit at her. She's been an absolute disgrace. And when you have a Trump Department of Justice this bad, it just creates this toothless administration where Democrats fear nothing. And that's why they continue to get away and perform all of these bad behaviors like the seditious six. No consequences. And if there's no consequences, that means there's no morality. That's how important this DOJ is, and it's failing miserably. And I'll end it by just showing you this article. If you really truly want to see how cucked this Trump administration is, a rogue judge is ordering the destruction of evidence against James Comey. Yeah, that's a real headline right now, and it's actually happening because apparently these judges, these Democrat-appointed judges, are insisting that the current Trump DOJ acquired evidence, mind you, of Comey's guilt wrongfully. And because they're simply alleging that the Trump DOJ acquired this evidence wrongfully, they are now trying to force the Attorney General Pam Bondi to either turn over that evidence or destroy it. And this Trump administration is so cucked that I could actually, in my head right now, visualize Pam Bondi gleefully getting out of her desk, saying, "Yes, sir," to the judge, "Yes, ma'am," to the judge, and then going and taking all of the Comey evidence that she has, that she barely got a chance to use, and just shredding it through the paper shredder into the garbage can and lighting it on fire too. Probably the same thing she did with the Epstein files that she claimed was on her desk all those months ago. But that's the state that the DOJ is currently at, and it's why there's so much frustration going on in America right now in general. When you deny the American people justice, the justice they feel they deserve, the retribution that they voted for, you only stir the pot more and more. You boil the water that's in the pot too, and it never leads to anything good. And it's bad enough that we're not getting the justice that we want. We're not getting the retribution we were promised, the revenge that we voted for. But now there's all these reports that continue to come out that just highlight the massive problems of this Trump economy, the Trump administration in general, and also serves to actually really highlight why there is such a massive generational divide happening. And that's a multifaceted divide, by the way. I don't ever want to be the guy that says, well, these young guys are just upset because the economy sucks. It's much, much more than that. There's a lot of social factors that are playing into this as well, but the economy does play its part. And right now, the cost of living is in absolute shambles for young generations. This is a graph that shows Gen Z is spending more on essentials than previous generations. And you can see this right here. Just look at the line graphs when it comes to what the real wages are, highlighted by the red line, compared to the cost of food, housing, and vehicle. Look at vehicle insurance, the darkest blue right there. That has spiked up. I've noticed that too. Vehicle insurance is out of control right now. I actually consider myself pretty lucky when it comes to vehicle insurance. I'm paying barely over $100 a month. I've heard reports of people paying $200, $300, $400, $500, $600, $700, $800 a month just to be able to drive a car. And I'm not even talking about people that have gotten into legal trouble with speeding tickets or DWIs. Those are sometimes just the standard prices, especially for new drivers. Housing right now is also outrageous. So it's like you're spending hundreds of dollars a month just to have your vehicle properly insured. Then you're spending the money on gas to keep it going and repairs. And on top of it, you're barely able to afford your rent. In some cases, people aren't affording their rent. And in most cases, people are not buying homes. What we have seen, the average median home buyer age 20 years ago was 39. That was already depressing enough 20 years ago to look back on and say, wow, why are people waiting so long to buy a home? It's 2005. Guess what the average median home buying age is now? Fast forward 20 years from 2005. It's now age 59. And so literally what that tells you is the same people, basically, the same age range of people that were buying homes 20 years ago are the only age range of people still buying homes today. Those, of course, are the Gen Xers. And I don't really have any hate for Gen Xers here. They're a kind of an overlooked generation. Nevertheless, what the problem highlights is, we have that 2007, 2008 housing market crash, and it just never got better, really. Wage growth is not doing well. Food costs have not come down overall under this Trump administration. And now Gen Z's out in the world. And Gen Alpha's behind them. And on top of it, it's not even like Gen Z can look at millennials and say, well, maybe it's a later start than we'd like, but the millennials are probably doing well. No, they're not. The millennials are not doing well. Millennials still can't own a home. And so there's just this doomer mindset now, and rightfully so, when it comes to the future of America and the future for the young generations. That's what's really causing the divide here. I mean, when you're forcing these people to go into the workforce and you're not allowing them to earn a good living, when you're not paying them all that well, and the cost of living is just skyrocketing, you're in for some hard times. You're in for massive rebellion, in truth. And this right here is another graph that I found to be very interesting. I'll briefly explain it to you. It's basically highlighting the difference in change when it comes to inflation, which is signified by the red line, and jobs growth, which is signified by the green bar graphs. And so what you can see is sort of a pattern here where, at least for a little bit last year, the inflation and the jobs growth was kind of at least matching. The pacing seemed more correct last year, as opposed to just recently, as of this summer, the inflation and the jobs growth is now separating at an alarming rate. And I'm going to say this right here. I actually got to settle down at one point and go into a deep dive on the effects that AI are going to have on the young generations and the jobs market, because it really is AI. AI is a big problem. And it's more than that too. I'm going to cover that in 1 second. But what we really are seeing is there is less opportunity out there. Meanwhile, the cost of living is out of control. And then you have this one too, which is just honestly so fucked up in my opinion. The labor productivity and real hourly compensation. Going all the way back to 1973, the red line signifying labor productivity and the blue dotted line signifying real hourly compensation. And again, a massive split, a massive divide where the hourly compensation has not kept up with labor productivity. And so all of that is to summarize with the last three graphs that I've shown you is everything's getting more expensive. Gen Z has to continually pay more and more just to be able to live a normal life that they saw their parents live. Meanwhile, job opportunities are decreasing at a massively alarming rate, all while inflation continues to go up. And then when they land a job, they're expected to work harder to maintain that labor productivity, which is going up. All the while, they're not getting paid for it, at least not getting paid what they deserve. And that's really just the start of all of the troubles of the young generations, because I've covered this topic at length already here on this channel as well. But here we are. The number of international students in the U.S. STEM jobs surges 54%. According to new Boundless report. And now this is nothing new under the sun. This was happening long before President Donald Trump took office. So he doesn't get all the blame for that one. In fact, we saw a record number of surges when it came to the number of OPT work permits, basically extensions for student visas who can then stay in this country and work an additional 3 years after graduating back in 2024 under Biden. That number was somewhere close to 200,000, by the way. Not to mention the fact that 70% of those OPT extensions were given to people from India and China. And so I've highlighted this before, but I'm going to say it again. And this is where Trump has really not only let us down, but quite honestly, fucked us over. Not only, like all those graphs show, is the cost of living getting worse for young people. Not only is the jobs market getting shittier while inflation goes up. Not only is work productivity going up while real wage growth is not matching the pace. But now, on top of all of that, America is actively seeking to replace its own citizens with foreign workers who are coming here, by the way, to largely develop tech and AI that will continue to replace American workers. They've essentially doubled the pace. And you have President Donald Trump in that disastrous interview literally mentioning how he didn't think Americans had enough talent to do this kind of work. So we must import the foreigners. On top of that, when it came to the student visas, he honestly thought it was the best thing ever to increase the amount of student visas granted to Chinese students because we need to, for some reason, keep our college campuses afloat. Is this a free marketplace we're living in? I'm confused. Why have there been so many bailouts of these businesses throughout the course of my short life, let alone going back into the past, even beyond that, beyond where I was born? Why have there been so many government bailouts? Let the free market work, especially when it comes to colleges. All of these student visas, I mean, what the fuck is this? You know, the Trump administration last year ran off of something very disheartening where they were talking about stapling the green cards onto the student visas. They wanted this. And that's disheartening. And honestly, it's atrocious, in my opinion. America first. That's what it's all about. And that's why, again, this generational divide is happening. It is truly going to be America first versus all of the political parties, because this is just honestly disgusting slop being fed to us by the right and left wing in many cases. They say two wings, same beak. And I always hated that. I always thought, oh, that's just such an excuse to sit on the fence as a centrist. And now just over the last couple of months alone, it's like I'm looking at this more and more and I'm realizing that's exactly what it is. And there's a number of reasons for that. But, you know, the troubling reality in all of this is just that, you know, they're not focused on the young generations, which is really where all of the attention needs to be placed. It's America's future at stake here. And then you have Trump to go on TV all the time and say, we're in the golden age. This is the golden age of America. It's never been better. They thought we were dead. All the countries thought we were a dead nation. But we are back, baby. Just look at the stock market. That's all you need to look at, the stock market. Don't look at anything else, just the stock market. It's doing pretty good. I'd say it's doing really good. People are making a lot of money on it. Yeah, the wealthy people are making a lot of money on it. It's like almost dystopian. To understand what's actually happening, to understand Americans are being replaced by AI and foreign workers, and then to turn on the TV and see the president say we're in the golden age. This is the golden age for what? The golden age for robots and AI? The golden age for big corporations who now won't have to worry about paying people? And please do not confuse me for a socialist. Just consider me someone who's warning you about why socialism is becoming more popular and why, in my opinion, it's almost inevitable. If AI continues to replace everything and the people making the AI are replacing the American jobs that could be making it, where else does this country go? We're heading right down the road of universal basic income, and nothing seems to be stopping it. We need restrictions on AI, and we're not getting that even. I understand from a military standpoint, I say go all in. China won't stop making their military AI. We shouldn't either, honestly. And that troubles me too. I think it's deeply troubled. I think people in China making AI are probably deeply troubled by it. I think all of humanity is. But what are you supposed to do? This is like a new nuclear arms race. Both sides may hate the idea, but if they continually suspect the other side's going to go forward anyway, there's no stopping it. But when it comes to everyday life, there needs to be regulations on AI. I'm going to make a video about it in the future. I've got to, because we've got to regulate this shit now before it just takes all the American jobs away. And we are on the verge of economic crisis. I made a video about that last time. Go check that out. I do think it's all going to come crashing down at the end of next year. I do. I think we're going to hit a recession in February. We're in this Christmas season right now. So what we're seeing is a lot of increased spending, a lot of happiness and optimism. This is December. It's the best month of the year for shopping, spending, the economy, stimulus, all that jazz. But January is the slowest month of the year for a lot of industries. And I think once that reality hits, I think we enter February into a recession, which I think the Trump administration will try to hide for a while. But it all seems very likely to me. And again, like I said, you have Trump on TV saying we're in the golden age. And I just don't think that's true. And here's Harry Enten from CNN going over all of it.
Yeah, you know, Donald Trump was elected to solve the economic crisis, to solve the pricing crisis. But at this particular point, these numbers are going in the complete wrong direction. On the economy, the country is going on the wrong track, the right track. You go back to January, these numbers were pretty split, right? 43% said wrong track, 36% said right track, right when Donald Trump came in office.
By the way, that split between the wrong track and right track was actually very favorable for President Trump. Those are actually, people don't realize this, those are impressive numbers that he was dealing with at the beginning of his term this year.
But look at that. That wrong track number has skyrocketed up to 56%. My goodness gracious, who say that the country, at least when it comes to the economy, is on the wrong track. And that right track number, Kate Baldwin, has fallen to 29%. So what was a single-digit spread has ballooned up to a 27-point spread in the negative direction. The bottom line is this. Donald Trump is trying to spin a narrative, and the American people aren't buying the spin that is coming out of the White House.
That's right. We're not buying it. And again, the generational divide reveals itself here even. Why aren't people buying it? It's because the boomers don't make up the majority anymore. When it comes to these polls, they don't make up the voting majority population anymore. They're hitting the deceased line. There's a new generation now, even with Gen Xers, I'd say, who are tech savvy and have more of a social media presence, but especially with millennials who were basically raised on social media, and Gen Zers who have known nothing else other than the internet. These people don't fall for the same tactics that the boomers did. If this was 1990 and the internet wasn't around yet, and the same circumstances that we're in now were happening then with the same President Trump, Trump would be able to go on the air and he'd be able to say, we're in the golden age, we're making a comeback, everything's fine, go buy a house, don't worry about it. Jerome Powell's leaving in May, everything's gonna get even better, it's all going well. Just look at the stock market in the newspaper, see the stock, the NASDAQ, the Dow, it's all doing well. And boomers would believe it because they always have been that way. Boomers never felt the need to do their own independent research. They were raised off the idea that the media was the truth, that the news was impartial, and that they were never being lied to. And then you mix in the fact that boomers, I've noticed this, have a very head in the sand approach. They know they fucked up America. They know they drag raced on our economy for their own gain. And they know that they basically lit a torch at both ends, and they know it's coming to an end. They're just hoping they can retire and die before it all collapses. So when you talk to boomers about the economy, they literally stick their head in the sand like an ostrich. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to know what's happening. They just want to pretend like it's not. And so it works when Trump tells the boomers everything's going well. But what you have is a far more politically active young generation, especially in Gen Z, who are paying attention because their lives are just getting started and there's nothing here left for them. So they're watching everything. And they're not gaslit easily like the old boomers were. They don't believe in the news. They don't even watch the news. They go on social media. They talk amongst themselves. There's this collectivity amongst the Gen Zers that the boomers never had. Boomers were the era of individualism. They were competitive with each other. They were selfish. They coined the term greed is good. They were all about themselves. It's now the opposite. With Gen Z especially, they have to come together. There's a strength in numbers mentality there. There's a survival element here. And that's what's going on. And so Gen Zers are talking with each other, especially the men who are far more conservative with their ideals at least. And they're saying, yo, society sucks. Something needs to change. And that's what's happening. That's why they're not eating the slop, the boomer slop that Trump is feeding them when it comes to the stock market being good. Nobody falls for that anymore. You can't just go on TV anymore and say the economy's doing great and we're in a golden era now. Don't believe your lying eyes. It just doesn't work.
In these new numbers, what is driving the pessimism?
Yeah, what is driving the pessimism? I mean, we've done a bunch of segments on this, and we're going to continue to do segments on this when polling, like what came out yesterday from NBC News, continues to show it. Top concern for you, economic concern for you and your family. Look at this. Number one, we've said it over and over again. 44%. 44% say inflation. I looked at the second one on it. Look at that. It's all the way back at 9%, taxes and take-home pay. It's inflation overwhelmingly driving this economic pessimism. And I will tell you this, until the American people think that inflation is under control, they will continue to have pessimistic feelings about the economy because inflation is numero uno by a wide, wide margin in driving this economic pessimism.
And you know the number one way to instill in the American public that things are getting better? It's honestly, I've said this before, it's grocery prices. What you're seeing with the Trump administration right now is they want to talk about the gas prices. And rightfully so, let them have the win. They deserve it. Gas prices are at a new low, not recorded since March of 2021, pretty much right before Joe Biden fucked everything up. So fair play. But the problem is gas prices just don't eat away enough at the everyday American's paycheck. Most people fill up their tank, once a week? I would estimate most people spend maybe $2,500 a year on gas at most. It's just not enough. But food prices, people need to eat, and people are eating a lot, of course. And people go grocery shopping every single week, and it's a big bill every single week, especially if you're buying for a family. But that's what's really whittling away at people. If food prices come down, which they largely haven't yet, I'm in the grocery store all the time because I'm a professional fat ass, and I see the prices, and many of them have not changed since the record Biden inflation that we saw in late 2022. 9% inflation, I remember it was a crazy time. And those prices they skyrocketed, and they barely have come down since. Some prices have gone up, actually, even, in part due to the Trump tariffs, like coffee. I don't drink coffee, so I don't care. I also like Trump tariffs overall, so I don't complain too much. But you get the point here. If in some cases prices are going up, and in best cases prices are either going down by 3 cents or not at all, we don't have a good economy yet.
So aside the president on this, how does this look party versus party?
Yeah, okay. So I think this is the key thing, right? Because oftentimes we'll say, hey, look, we're blaming the president, but we've seen some polling in which Republicans still lead Democrats. But take a look here. Party trusted more on rising prices. Back in October of 2022, before that midterm election, it was Republicans trusted more by 14 points. You come now, it's a completely different tune. Now Democrats are trusted more by 4 points. So it's not just the president that the American people are turning on when it comes to inflation. It is, in fact, the Republican Party as well. A massive shift to the left towards the Democratic Party.
And that right there truly is the biggest disgrace of all, because for all of my life even, the Republicans have always been the party associated with a better economy. Always. That was the one win when it came to controlling the narrative that the Republicans had a grip on. The Democrats were always the party for social rights. The Republicans were always the party for fiscal responsibility and for a better economy. Even when Trump was elected last year, there was a spiteful admission of that by Democrats who literally stated, wow, apparently no one cares about women's abortion rights. I hope the cheaper gas and lower cost at the grocery store was worth it. It was a spiteful way of saying, hey, you chose to vote for a better economy over social rights. It was just, nobody questioned it, not even last year. It was always, wow, the people just only care about the economy. That's why they voted Republican. And now that's not even true. According to this poll here, and it's CNN, granted, but Harry Enten has been a good pollster, in my opinion. I actually view Harry Enten as a somewhat reliable source. I actually think he might be a closet Republican, if I'm being honest with you. Nevertheless, take the results for what they are, take them with a grain of salt. People are now favoring Democrats more when it comes to solving economic problems. That's terrible. I've never seen something like that in my life. But here we are, 4-point favorability. And the Republicans deserve to be in this spot. And it is President Trump's fault. And it is causing a generational divide because the boomers are too insulated with all of the wealth they've accumulated over the years to even understand why the young generations are complaining. Even worse so, in complete ignorance, they then make posts about how Gen Zers are lazy. Give me a fucking break. President Trump has less than 1 year to get a grip on what the American people are struggling with and to solve it, or at the very least make major progress towards solving it. Something needs to change now, or I don't care how many court cases Republicans win. Louisiana versus Calais, racial gerrymandering. I don't care how many states redistrict. Texas gaining 5 seats, Indiana gaining 1. It doesn't matter. There will be a blue wave in the midterms next year if we hit September of next year and the economy is still in the same shape then that it's in right now. It's going to be a big, big problem. And now to wrap all of this up and tie it up in a neat little bow, it's time to go over the poll that I posted just about 2 days ago on my community tabs post on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to American Advocates right now so you can be alerted when I post these polls. Be sure to hit the bell icon so you're alerted to every post that I make. You can then vote on these polls and leave comments down below on them where there's a chance they'll be read off live on these episodes and responded to by me. The whole point of these polls, the reason why I'm doing them, is it's time to get the voices out there of what people are thinking, feeling, and what they ultimately want, as well as creating a discussion and in some cases an open discourse towards these topics. And what I did for this poll was ask everyone, and probably one of the most unpopular polls I've posted in a while, so far only receiving 301 votes. The U.S. national debt is at $38 trillion. If Trump had to cut one program of the three highest costing programs to bail us out and stop a total economic collapse, which one would you prefer he targeted? And of course, the three highest costing programs are Social Security coming in at $1.5 trillion, Medicare coming in at $1 trillion, and National Defense at $900 billion. And despite the fact that it got a low number of votes, this is still a very eye-opening and revealing poll where you can see the most popular one to cut, if it had to be cut, would actually be Medicare, according to 56% of people voting. After that would actually be National Defense, and then Social Security was the least popular answer with just 13%. And I put this poll up for a couple of reasons, and one of those reasons being that I am probably going to make a video in the future, maybe a series of videos in the future, where I hypothesize what it would be like if these programs had to be cut. I'll take it one at a time. Very likely my first one will be about Social Security. In my opinion, it's the one I actually think should go. And that's going to be very controversial. But Social Security is a literal failing system, and it's literally a socialist program. And man, do people hate to hear that, but it is so true. It's been around for too long. It's been failing for decades. And just like I was mentioning earlier, the boomers, they know it's failing. They knew it was failing all along, and that's why their head is in the sand when it comes to the economy. They don't want to hear it. They just want to retire, they just want to collect their Social Security, and they just want to be able to sip out of their mugs while looking out the window at the rest of the world burning, while millennials and Gen Z and Gen Alpha scramble around, panicking for their lives. And the boomers get to, of course, just fade away out of existence peacefully. That's the dream right now for them. That's really where we're at as a society. And Social Security has no chance of being around for millennials like me. I'm a young millennial on the border of Gen Z and millennials, and it's not going to be there. I've made an entire video on this. It not only cost us $1.5 trillion per year and just eats away at our national debt, but on top of that, it's unsustainable because when Social Security was created back in 1935, and then taxes started being taken out of it in 1937, the average American worker to retiree rate was astronomical. It was at 41.9 American workers per one American retiree. So you had this massive, completely correct balance of people funding Social Security for those who were retiring. But the problem is that number didn't stay good, and it only continued to decline every single decade. And that's what I mean by the boomers knew. The politicians, all of them knew. They could see the writing on the wall at some point, certainly by the 70s or 80s, that this system was going to fail. They could see it. There's no way that they didn't. Yet they just kept it afloat, kept their fingers crossed, and every politician almost traditionally just looked at it and said, well, hopefully it doesn't collapse under my presidential term. And that's where we're at right now, because now the ratio of American workers per retiree is at just 2.5 workers to one retiree. And so that's why I say it's unsustainable, because it truly is. And that's why it needs to go. Like, for millennials and Gen Z to actively be working, if they can even find fucking jobs, that is, and paying into this system that they're never going to reap any benefits from, is asinine. And the problem is, it's so complex when it comes to how we would actually theoretically dismantle Social Security and eliminate it. It's so complex. You can't just snap your fingers and eliminate it, because if you do, we enter a massive recession. And of course, boomers lose their minds. Not that they're really capable of resisting it all that much anymore. They're too old. But from a moral standpoint, from an ethics standpoint, they did pay into it. So I think they deserve something back. But the point being is, it has to go away. We have to get rid of it. And no politician wants to be the anti-populist and take that approach. Because certainly, for instance, if Trump was to decide that I'm correct and that it needs to go away and he's going to get rid of it in 2026, well, he would cost the entire Republican Party the midterms from all the boomers who would then easily sway to the left. And the left would capitalize on it, mind you. And that would be their unanimous campaign for the midterms, would be saving Social Security from the evil authoritarian Trump. And so you can see the problem. No politician wants to do what needs to be done, which is eliminate it. Just get rid of it. But now let's take a look at some of the comments here, what you guys had to say about this. Lewis Payne, 4589, commented, generational welfare. It really is, dude. It really is generational welfare. That's why I have such a problem with it, and that's why I stated it is a socialist program. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You look up the definition of what a socialist program is, and you compare that side by side with what Social Security is, and it's almost verbatim socialism. It aligns like 95%. And that's why I find it so ironic that the boomers are mad at millennials and Gen Zers for voting in Zohran Mamdani as mayor of New York City. How could you vote for a socialist, you idiot kids? Because they don't understand the economy and they don't understand economic populism somehow, which literally wins every election. But, you know, all it takes is a guy to promise, hey, I'll freeze your rent and I'll make public transportation affordable. And we're going to try government-funded grocery stores to try and get these prices down. Best messaging I've heard as a millennial. Certainly haven't heard that kind of talk from the current administration. And I know socialism doesn't work, but it doesn't matter. And on top of that, for boomers to shout down from their second vacation home's rooftop towards millennials and Gen Z and say, I can't believe you'd vote for a socialist. Listen, fuckheads, you benefited the most from socialism because of Social Security and Medicare, so I don't want to hear it. Paul Halter, 4595, says, get rid of the fraud. I do agree with that too. I just don't think it would be enough. Carla Mortimore, 9166, says, none of them. How about we cut Congress and the Senate's pay? On a basic primal level, and from a standpoint of humor, I'd like to go, yeah, those no good, disgusting politicians don't deserve it. The government was shut down and they were making money. And that part I don't agree with. I think when the government shuts down, they shouldn't make a dime. And Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana actually just pushed forward a bill today, by the way, that would actually make that a reality where if the government is shut down, senators and congressmen don't make a dime. I'm all for that. However, when it comes to their actual base pay, what they're actually supposed to be making annually, I have no problem with it. Their base pay is under $200,000 a year. That's fine by me. I want the pay to be good enough for them to support a family and to live pretty well, provided they, of course, do a good enough job for us. Now, all the other things that come with becoming a congressman and a senator, the insider trading, the massive amounts of fraud, the inexplicable $176,000 a year salary that somehow leads to them all being worth $30 million in 5 years, that part is shady, that part is disgusting, and that part needs to end by any means necessary. Dark Night Light says, cut welfare. No more free food unless you are a veteran or have at least 10 years of work history and can't collect more than 2 years. If you have 20 years or more work history, no more than 5 years. No more of people not putting into a social program and just mooching off of a system that was meant to help people who actually work for a living and fell on hard times. Stop enabling lazy behavior who feel entitled to free taxpayers' money. Get a job. And listen, I'm right there with you again. I agree pretty much overall with that one. I also think when it comes to disability benefits, there needs to be incredibly strict standards for that. And there needs to be incredibly strict inspection to ensure that the people who are claiming disability are in fact disabled. But again, I'm just not sold on the idea that there's so much fraud that it's causing our national debt to skyrocket more than just the programs themselves. That's where I'm at with it. I think Social Security is probably full of fraud, but even if you eliminate the fraud, I think Social Security is just too much of a problem regardless. Same goes for probably Medicare, and same goes for welfare in general. You know, I'm somewhat anti-food stamp overall. I think that for the most part, most people don't deserve food stamps. I think it's pathetic overall. I think welfare in general is pathetic, but nevertheless, we're at where we're at, and yeah, let's eliminate the fraud, but even after that, I just don't see it being the major issue here. And you know, there's another one here from Old Fashion who says fraud. He can cut that at 100%. It would be the best for America. Then deport. That should bring us up to speed. I don't agree. I just don't agree. I want that to happen. I'm all for it. I just don't think it's actually going to matter as much as you think. Naysayers Ranch think this guy's commented on my channel before. Change the Social Security so there's no limit that gets contributed at this point. Once you make over a certain amount, you stop contributing. That's crap. You should contribute based on whatever you make, and then you get the maximum at the end of it. I don't know. I see what you're saying, and from a business standpoint, a mathematical standpoint, it almost makes sense. It probably would have a positive effect on the Social Security program in general, but that's almost like the conservative inverse of like, how do we fix the economy? Tax the rich more, tax them more. They're rich, they can afford it. It's almost the same thing. It's not, but it almost is the same thing, and I just don't like the idea. But I'm very radical on Social Security, so you probably have the more popular stance on it in general than I do. Brian3830 says, fourth option, stop giving tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires. Oh, God. Are we really still on this? I mean, you just don't understand anything if that's what you're saying. Tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires. There's always going to be a way for the wealthy to exploit the tax system. And it's not even really exploiting the taxes. I think taxes are stupid overall. But the tax breaks are far more beneficial to America than they're detrimental. You don't just tax the rich more and expect them to willingly comply. What you need to understand when it comes to the rich are they're powerful enough with enough resources to resist any effort to do so. And we see this all the time in blue states that try to do this. You just drive businesses out and they go towards where the business is good. And then the liberals will say, well, it's the red states that open up their homes to them and allow the rich to flee to them to avoid the taxes. What do you think happens if all of America turns blue? Do you think businesses thrive in that environment? Do you think rich people are happy to live here? Or do you think they just go somewhere where they're more welcomed? Like, I don't know, Dubai. Anywhere in the world that is still business savvy enough for them to thrive or do better in. It doesn't work. Digger5062 says, how about cutting all of the nonsense pending first and then revisit this question? I mean, that's a somewhat fair question, but the problem, like I said, is I'm just not convinced that there's so much fraud and corruption in these programs that fixing it would solve our national debt. Adamonicus attempts 7119. I recognize this guy. One of my loyal viewers and commenters. I appreciate you. He says, if one had to go, ditch the Medicare. Also, subsidies need caps. Privatize medicine and watch supply and demand rebalance naturally. Yeah, I can actually see the Medicare option being compelling. I do. I genuinely can see why people would vote for Medicare over Social Security being cut. I really think there's a case there. It's something I'll have to look into more. But again, it's one of those ones, $1 trillion a year going down the drain in Medicare. And, you know, I know it sounds callous to say that. The old people need the government to live. I understand, but here's the thing. We have to get rid of stuff in order for the government to survive, in order for our country to not only thrive, but also just survive. We can't keep going at this pace forever, despite what some people think. It is all going to come crashing down, and something needs to be done about it right now. Adam Hoffman says all 6,000 programs except the 19 delegated in the Constitution. I like the way you think. Yeah, here's what I'm going to say to that one, honestly. Whatever happened to personal accountability? And that's why I view these programs as socialist, because what these programs do is they allow people to lean on the government for support. How about instead of Social Security, we educate our people better when it comes to saving for the future, for investing in the future, not just saving money. Saving money is stupid. So many people are money illiterate. They have no idea. They think the goal is to make as much money as possible and stick it under your mattress, or even worse, in a bank. That's a great way to never get ahead, and people don't get it. People don't understand what money is actually supposed to do. It's called currency for a reason. What's currency? What is a current? It's a perpetually moving stream of water. It's called cash flow. You're supposed to be moving money, always. People don't get this. And so as a result, they literally lean on the government to do that for them via Social Security, which forces the money to flow. We're going to take that money out of your paycheck. You have to give us that money for Social Security. You have to give us that money for taxes. You have to put in money for your 401k. How about you just manage it yourself? You ever heard of that? Like, the problem with these things is it goes against Darwinism. It goes against survival of the fittest, and that's cold and cruel. But guess what? I just don't care anymore. I'm watching this country burn to the ground, and I'm watching the leading factors contributing to our debt, for instance, being all of these bullshit social programs that all of the old people need. And you know what happens if Medicare goes away, for instance? I have faith in humanity, believe it or not, to some degree. Like Adamonicus was saying in the comments, privatize medicine. More so than it already is. People will take care of each other to some degree, but they don't want to be forced to take care of each other. That's in large part what a lot of this comes down to. People already go out of their way to feed the poor beyond the money that they put into food stamps. We see this happen all the time, yet welfare exists. The government feels the need to force everyone to contribute to it. It's not free market. It's not a free market. That's not actually capitalism. It is socialism. I know I've said that a lot, but I'm really passionate about that. And so that's what I'm trying to say here. All of these boomers that are relying on Social Security to stay alive and enjoy retirement, why weren't you better with your money? Do you really think you just deserve to retire very well, knowing full well that no other generation below you will be able to take advantage of it like you? Do you really think you deserve that? The people who retire well are the people who were smart with their money. You don't hear about multimillionaires talking about how they can't wait for Social Security. That's for a reason. These people don't need it. And no, not everyone will be a multimillionaire. Most people won't be. But everyone can afford to sit down and learn about how money actually works and become money literate and become more financially savvy. Everyone can do that, and everyone should do that, and everyone should be required to do that going forward when it comes to our education system. Cameron L. says, well, the current fraud in Minnesota is estimated at around $2.5 trillion, so they could cut that. I wanted to verify that comment, so I just looked it up. It's not $2.5 trillion in fraud. That's a crazy number. And if that was true, oh my God, we would have to send all of the federal government to come raining down on that state and pretty much arrest all of the politicians in there for, I don't even know at that point, but that would be a disastrous situation. It's actually much more close to 1 to 2.5 billion. You got the number wrong there a little bit. Nevertheless, I'm all for it. Deport the Somalis back to their country and get rid of the fraud. Absolutely. Mrs. Ken Scott, 9643 says, welfare. There are plenty of jobs, and unless a person is physically unable, a work requirement is the only solution. That's a somewhat out of touch approach, I got to be honest with you. You think there are plenty of jobs, and on paper, there seems to be plenty of jobs, but when it comes to young people especially, there are no jobs. Trust me on that. As far as your welfare take goes, I agree with that. Let's cut it. Keystone Liberty 1776, another really amazing viewer here on this channel. I appreciate all the support all the time from him. He says, overall, I would say defense spending in all likelihood. Social Security and Medicare will not be sustainable in the future. Yep. So that eventually does away with them right there. The other idea I would suggest is to reduce the size of the current congressional representation as it stands currently at 435 congressional districts in the United States. That is 435 too many congressional districts that should be reduced in all fairness. Congressional representation shouldn't exceed 300 members at minimum for congressional representation in Congress. I mean, you know, I do somewhat agree with that. I think you're kind of pinching at pennies, though, when it comes to reducing the size of Congress, though. Let's be real. Their base salary, if we just go off those numbers and not the suspicious ones that they wind up obtaining wealth-wise over their time in Congress, you're really not saving all that much. Congress in general is probably too large. That much I do agree with. The number is astronomical. So, and then in regards to your take on national defense, could we afford to lower that budget down? That's the one, in my opinion, where I actually think, no, let's leave that number where it's at. And let's just embrace the fate of Medicare and especially Social Security by proactively beginning the process towards reducing it and eventually dismantling it. And man, that is a bleak take. And man, that won't be a popular take with boomers. But that's my genuine thoughts on that. Start with Social Security and then get rid of Medicare. And you know what? Count me out as somebody who could ever run for president, being on record saying that now. But, you know, by the time I'm old enough to run for president, those programs won't be around anyway, will they? User TV says, none of the above. Let these politicians pay for their own bills. That's it, not taking from taxpayers' money. And you can see a whole string of comments here. Terry L. Bostater, none of these go after the fraud. Wendy Morian, none. Stop government wasteful spending. I read that in the tone of a aggravated woman because her name's Wendy. None. Stop terrible wasteful spending. Don't come after my Social Security. Curiosities, you were on my last episode, man. You're about to be on it again, too. Curiosities says, defense can definitely be cut. The DOD can't pass an audit. Social Security can be stabilized by eliminating the cap. We can have universal health care like every developed country. Make the ultra-rich pay their fair share. Single payer would allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices and eliminate the insurance companies that are skimming so much off the top in profits. All of these are policy choices, and we need to get the money out of politics so the billionaires and corporations aren't making the rules. Remember, we the people. Man, that is a mixed bag right there for me, honestly. I disagree with you on so much. I don't agree we should target the national defense budget and reduce the spending there. I think it's a justified amount we're spending when you consider just the national security element in all of it. Now, if you want to talk about auditing them, that's a different story. That much I'd be okay with for sure. I think transparency and frequent audits when it comes to our government is very important and not done nearly enough. Then we cover the whole national healthcare thing. I just completely disagree with national healthcare. It's been nothing but a disaster. And in all those other countries, anytime it's attempted in a larger one, not these tiny ones that pull it off, a larger one, even Canada, for instance, which isn't that population dense, it fails. Just ask any Canadian about their healthcare system and they'll tell you what a fucking mess it is, where they're waiting in line just to see a doctor for like 3 to 6 months. Their conditions get worse over time while they're waiting. Nothing goes well. It's not smooth. And that's Canada. A large country like America, which is so much more population dense than Canada, is going to fail miserably with universal health care, and already is kind of. We already have Obamacare, and it sucks. It's an absolute disaster. It's not going to get better, and there's nothing you can do to make it better. I do lean into the privatized medicine philosophy overall. Let everyone be personally responsible. That's what America's supposed to be all about. It's a free marketplace, it's capitalism, etc. Free to make your own choices and personally responsible for your health, your wealth, your well-being, etc. That's where I stand on that. Now, when it comes to insurance companies, though, I'm with you on that. Insurance companies are disgusting and greedy, and they're ultimately full of bad faith tactics. So I align with you on some of it, but certainly not all of it. I found this comment to be very interesting here. Dean Granrud says, we paid for our Social Security, which they borrowed from, promised it would be paid back, and our national defense, we definitely need some of the more recent programs that they have come up with, need to be cut to the bone. Not another penny spent. Democrats have made our economy almost unfixable. And you know, I found that comment very interesting because it just goes back to belabor my point earlier about how Social Security is just a socialist program. And just like every other socialist program ever been tried, it's failing, and it's failing for a big reason. And the fact that the money from Social Security was borrowed by the U.S. government, surprise, surprise, and that's causing it to fail even harder, is not a surprise at all. In fact, this is why socialism fails and will always fail. The government can't help itself. It doesn't manage funds well at all on behalf of anybody, and it will always perpetually be greedy and desperate to get its hands on more money. It's proverbial hands. And so, yeah, I found that comment funny almost because it's true. It's very, very true. And then finally, Prem P990 says, Social Security, the boomers already have houses. To be honest with you, I almost couldn't agree more. I think, like I said, we have to go about it very ethically, though. But yeah, the boomers have already profited the most off of America's economy back when the economy was actually great. And now they want all of the systems to remain in place just long enough for them to benefit from it even more. And then ideally, they all want to hit that deceased line as it implodes in front of them. It's our problem now. Us young people have to deal with it now. Thanks, boomers. But that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to American Advocates for more content like this and hit that fucking bell icon so you're notified when I post. And when you're notified, make sure to act on that notification right away, liking the posts and videos that I make and leaving comments on all of them. It helps me fight the algorithmic battle that we're all facing at the hands of YouTube and against AI, to be frank. Just like everything else in this world, AI is replacing everything. So help me in this algorithmic war and like this video right now and comment down below what your thoughts and opinions are on all of it. Until next time.